We got a personal story here that I think will resonate with a lot of folks tonight. Welcome into My State of Mind. I am Dan York. It is on these nights when we have something else going on production-wise, or I'm conflicted in schedule, conflicted in other ways, perhaps off for the gosh knows where, out of town, whatever. But the Dan York State of Mind program has got to run no matter whether I'm here on the specific day we produce or not. And I actually enjoy these kinds of shows, as I've told you before, because it gives me a chance to spread it out, a little less of my opinion and a lot more of the storytelling that goes on. And by the way, if you ever think after watching this program or another like it that you'd like to tell your story here on the air, there's a part of the program at the end where I offer a telephone number or an email. You can send either one or both and let us know that you think there's somebody, maybe you, maybe somebody you know, who needs to be highlighted. Tonight, we've got a really interesting story. Take a look at this book. This is provocative, don't you think? From Harvard to Hell and then back. The back part is actually a smaller case, so I find that to be interesting. I wonder why that is. Is there a reason for that?
I hadn't thought about that. I think the publisher wanted to put the emphasis on Harvard.
Harvard,
yeah, right, exactly.
It's a big thing.
Right.
Dr. Sviokla.
Sviokla.
Exactly. I've been practicing. But that boom. So that's why he said, Dan, just call me Dr. Skip.
Right.
You know. And Jess, my producer over there, is gloating because she said, "Why don't you just call him Dr. Skip?" So, Dr. Skip, welcome.
Thank you. It's a joy to be here.
So you wrote this book, From Harvard to Hell and Back. You've
right.
got some attention in some of these magazines that follow the issue of addiction. And you've got a story to tell. Now, we have some excerpts from the book that I think are pretty provocative, but rather than starting from the inside out,
okay.
What is your story, sir?
No matter where you start out, if this disease of addiction grabs you, you're going to end up in the same place, which is either near death or dead. And I was a guy that had everything going for him. I was born into a good family. I had great education, great opportunity, married a beautiful woman, had a beautiful family. Everything was going my way. And somehow, with some hole in my heart that I still haven't quite decided, I turned into a really rip-roaring addict and was able to control it, as we all think we can, for the longest period of time. But Vicodin finally brought me down. I had been an oftentimes heavy drinker, but no one really knew that I drank very much because I could control it the way most people who are heavy drinkers can, who don't show it. And but as I made more money, had a more fluid and fun lifestyle, dealt with a lot of rock and roll stars, in addition to running emergency rooms on both coasts. I had a rock and roll practice that allowed me to fly with some of the hottest stars of the 70s and 80s. Life was good. I didn't appreciate it, and Vicodin entered my life after I had some serious surgery and some pain, and once I hit the Vicodin, I fell hard to it.
Right, good. The Vicodin thing is an important hook for us because right now as we speak, regardless of when this show is actually airing in our calendar year, we got a very serious Vicodin problem type. Well, you know, the oxycodone type of problems that are out there right now are significant, right? So we should, we'll talk a little bit about that specifically because we've done other programs on it. So let's rewind it even further back. You are from originally?
Brockton, Massachusetts.
Okay, and you got your medical degree when?
I got my medical degree in '72. I went to Harvard College in '67. Got a chance to try out for the Chicago Bears. At the same time, I got, a telegram saying I was admitted to Harvard Medical School. I chose to go to Harvard Medical School. I had to repeat my first year in Harvard Medical School because I had tried to fly through it too easily. The Red Sox had Carl Yastrzemski, the cardiac kids, and I used to leave anatomy lab to go watch them play. I didn't take the first year seriously. I was the only non-adult of the class of 100. They allowed me to repeat my year after examining me for a long time to make sure I was okay, that I wasn't crazy, and how did they make a mistake. I buckled down. I love surgery. I get into surgery. I wanted to take gallbladders out for a living and do it for free. I loved it so much. If you've never been in the right upper quadrant, you have no idea how much fun it is to mess around with a liver and a gallbladder. But actually, unimpaired.
You know, I've always wondered. I meet surgeons all the time.
Yeah.
And I ask them what makes them tick. And they generally give me rather blasé answers, and no one has ever told me how much of a high they get from being inside somebody's guts and whatever.
It's a blast. It really is. I really would have, if I could have, I would have taken them out for nothing for the rest of my life. I love the right upper quadrant. It wasn't quite as sexy as neurosurgery or cardiac surgery.
So like when people would so over the course of your career, forget your addiction stuff.
Right.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
So you meet somebody, like having dinner with them for the first time.
Yeah.
Are you kind of like looking at their gut, going, "Geez, I wonder if I could get in there"?
It does occur to me every now and then, especially if they start having a little pain.
Dude, I don't know about your addiction, but you're weird. I'm kidding.
Well,
I'm kidding. It's
yeah.
I've always wondered what makes a surgeon tick. So it's fun to be in there, is what you're saying.
Yes, it is. When you have to do it yourself for the first time, it's a little scary.
Yeah.
You get a
So
lot.
don't tell the patient that.
No,
right?
no, you don't. But the first time that you lay the scalpel on someone's skin, it's really hard to push hard enough to go through. I mean, at least I find that way, and everybody that I was in training with did that. And I had gotten to my senior year in surgery, was loving it, and when I had an accident that had nothing to do with addiction, I picked up a bowl to look at it. I'm right-handed. The bowl exploded because it was not annealed properly. That's a long story, but the bowl came down and cut my right hand, cut 5 tendons, my ulnar artery, my ulnar nerve. After 9 hours of surgery, I was in a cast like this for 9 months. And suddenly the operating room, which was a great source of, I love being in there. It was a great place to be. No one could get you. You were having fun. All of a sudden, when I went back in, I couldn't work my hand very well. And my chief of surgery at that time out in San Diego, I was at UCSD, kept saying, just give yourself time. But I was frightened all of a sudden in the emergency room,
Sure.
in the operating room. And at that time, for the first time in my life, I had a change of occupation that went, again, for me, at the time, it was very fortuitous. Emergency medicine in the 70s was just beginning as a specialty. My hand was good enough to do emergency medicine. I was making $9,000 a year in San Diego as a resident. I was offered a job at $10,000 a month up in Los Angeles as an ER doctor, and I left surgery, and then boom, I was off and running for 25 years.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Very good. I love guests like this. Just, Doc, you just go. You got a lot to say. There's a lot on your mind. There's no doubt about it.
Well, it's a small book, but there are a lot of words, yeah.
Yeah, all right. When we come back, we'll talk about what happened and how he went to hell from Harvard, and then he got back. Stay with us. Yeah, there's a lot of good prescribing out there for pain, no doubt, and there's also a lot of exploitation going on, and we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit with Dr. Skip here, whose book is From Harvard to Hell and Back, and who right now is running a practice in Warwick, correct? Medical assisted recovery, assisted recovery.
Yes.
And so we went from a surgeon who loved taking out gallbladders to an emergency room doctor to hell.
Right.
And now you're back helping
Yes.
people with their addictions.
Right.
So, okay, short answers, because there's a lot to cover, and you write some things in this book that I think are fascinating in terms of your concepts. What happened? You got into the jet set type of world? Is that what occurred?
I did. I lived high. I went flying around with a lot of rock and roll stars, and I had a lot of
Like who?
time and a
Anybody
lot
cool?
of money. Because I was not their Dr. Feelgood. I was treating medical illnesses. I flew with the groups Bon Jovi, Def Leppard.
Really?
Yeah, and Lou Reed was actually
You
my
flew
first
with them
one.
because...
Well, I flew with Bon Jovi because one of them was very sick and they wanted a doctor to accompany them on the flight.
I see, okay.
And so I did. And then when they had a big opening in New York City, they wanted me to be there, and I actually...
And so would you get caught up partying with them?
Not a lot. I actually was just there to make sure they're okay. And most of these folks didn't even request any drugs. I mean, they were legitimately ill. When they would come to the Boston area, because Great Woods, I helped build the...
So that was kind of your niche. You found
that was my niche, yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
so what happens? I mean, you started to drink, and that's where it all began?
Well, I'd always drunk a lot and had a high tolerance, and nobody knew that I was drunk for many, many years, but I knew that I was drinking too much, and as the time went on, and as I became more bored and I made more money and I had more time on my hands, I drank more.
Well, you have a
Yep.
thought here. I'm going to put this up. You're right. There's an oddity about drinking. When you do it in a dive bar surrounded by dark denizens of depressed dourness, you feel like a loser and you face your demons as such. When you're downing drink after drink at the Harvard Club or some other ritzy joint surrounded by the high and mighty, you just get just as drunk, but you feel like a winner. You're right. I felt like a winner, but I drank like a loser. And no matter where you drink, when you do too much, you become a loser. That was an interesting description.
Well, it starts to slip away, and I knew it, and I couldn't stop, and that's when you think you can control it. If you get up the next morning and say, well, I'm not going to have a drink until tomorrow night, you start to try to control it. That's the beginning of controlled drinking, and most people that I know who drink a lot will hang on to. They won't try to stop because they really do enjoy the escape that comes when they drink, and clearly, as time goes on, you develop a higher and higher tolerance, which requires you to drink just to calm yourself down.
Okay. So that's part of your dependency problem?
That's right. And that I had always drunk too much, but I'd never gotten in trouble for it. Never had a problem, never had drunk driving, although God knows I drove drunk many times. I never hurt anybody. I was never arrested for drunk driving. What happened was I'm an addict in everything. And late in my life, I blew up to 400 pounds. And I had an early gastric bypass at Scripps Hospital in La Jolla. After that operation, I lost 120 pounds. You're supposed to not drink or maybe have a half a glass of wine after that. And by the way, gastric bypass is now causing a lot of addictions to surfacing. But nonetheless,
because the pain involved with it?
Well, no. Well, I think partly it's exposure to that. But people tend to drink or take pain pills afterwards in association with the surgery. But mostly it's the alcohol that brings them in there. Because of the bypass and because of the routing of the alcohol through the system, you don't tolerate alcohol very well after surgery. It is remarkable how many people come into my office now who are addicts of any kind. And when I ask them, so when was your gastric bypass surgery? They say, how do you know I had it? Because it's really an epidemic of that. I mean, so there are a lot more people coming out. So, but what happened was I get stabbed in my sciatic nerve with medication. I had a severe foot drop on one side. I had some real pain. Got on an anti-inflammatory, would shut my kidneys down. My doctor said, you got to get off that or you're going to have to, start to get dialysis. I was fortunate, stopped the anti-inflammatory. I found Vicodin, and then I went downhill. I got up to 150 Vicodin a day before I got my license.
Okay, so the chemical dependencies are one thing, but you also seem to have an attitude problem, or did.
Oh, sure.
It doesn't seem apparent now, but you're right. As the man of the house, I expect to be loved, worshipped, and adored. My word was law. And being a doctor, an occupation second only to God, maybe even more insufferable, God only rested on the seventh day so I could take over. That's pretty cocky. In retrospect, it's pretty honest.
It is. And the fellow who wrote the book with me, because he's written over 40 books, he's a hot ticket. We talked about it a lot. Those were my statements, and that's what he wrote. And he said, is this who you were and what you did all the time? And I said, yeah, absolutely, write it down. I sound like an awful jerk. I don't remember saying it exactly that way, but I know
right now, I mean, you come across as very congenial, easy to get along with. I mean, you speak fast, but you're a humble guy, I can tell. You weren't then.
No, I was humbled by the illness, no question about it.
And so you were a flaming
Absolutely, no question about it.
I am he type.
Yeah.
Did people around you know that or think that about you?
I think yes, I think so.
So when you came down hard.
Yes.
And you write about how people think about that. Well, tell me. You say when you screw up like I did, you take your lumps because everyone around you seems to think if they don't punish you, you won't understand what you did wrong.
Right. And I think the people around you do that. They have a right to feel that way because you continue to lie to them. We're the greatest liars in the world, and that's one of the
great. The addicted?
Especially opiate addicts. Okay, but I mean, drunks lie, but they make stupid lies. Are you drinking? No, I haven't had a drink. That's pretty easy. Opiate, well, there's an old joke. It's not very funny, but it does make the point. An alcoholic will steal your wallet. An opiate addict will steal your wallet and help you look for it. And I mean, we become in order to get along on opiates for a long time, people have to lie quite a bit. Either they're getting prescription opiates, they're doing heroin. And they refine their lying.
Well, I want to talk about that because that's where you can not only share your story but offer some expertise here. We'll talk about that when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
can show you my list of overdoses for the last month and a half. The youngest age is 19 and the oldest one's 59. It crosses all boundaries.
That gentleman offering his expertise, actually from law enforcement and the medical world, they all got together a few months ago in Pawtucket to talk about this Vicodin and this opiate problem that just seems to be blowing up all over the place. And to find out that some 70% of those who are addicted are addicted via original prescriptions is just incredible. Dr. Skip is here. His book is From Harvard to Hell and Back, and he's just chronicled his drinking issues and all that kind of stuff, and kind of a high life, and having it all, and then so you've come back and recertified as a guy who can handle addiction medicine, correct?
Right. It's another new specialty, like emergency medicine was when I got out of surgery.
Well, congratulations on that. I mean, you've taken your biggest life challenge and embraced it so much so that you've melded it into your professional excellence, which is admirable.
Which makes me enjoy going to work every day, and I want to help folks get there a little bit sooner than I did.
You enjoy helping people with addictions as much as you used to enjoy taking gallbladders out?
No, that was more fun.
You still crave the gallbladders, huh?
Yes, I do.
Do you ever go in the hospital and just say, let me just do one more?
No, because they take about 2 scopes now, and that's no fun. You got to open them up, get bloody.
All right, but listen, the very serious discussion on things like Vicodin and the like, I've told the story before. The dentist, yanks my teeth out, 4 of them. The last one took an hour and a half, 2 hours. Here's the pill. I take one pill. I go, I don't want to be on this crap. Never took another one. Yeah. But I have friends, buddies with back problems and knee problems and the like who get the Percocet or this or that. They've got a pill box, and I worry about them getting another one. You have strong thoughts about this.
Yes, I do. I think that Vicodin is way overprescribed, so is Percocet. There's no need for Vicodin or Percocet beyond 3 or 4 days in almost any illness. Post-operatively, perhaps, when you're doing rehab. But the minute you start to prescribe massive amounts of medication for a very short-term acute illness, you're setting up a disaster. That's why an idea about this Narcan, which is being used as the tail end of the illness,
we should slow down. The Narcan is this program. This is something that somebody takes when they're actually seizing up and in an overdose mode.
That's correct.
All right.
Right. And they usually stop breathing and
Right. And it's administered.
It's usually administered intravenously in a hospital because Narcan has been used for decades as something to bring someone back from an opiate overdose. Right. Now it's being given out to people to be used in any recovery centers. Individuals can buy it, and it can be jabbed in. It can be used intramuscularly, so it's easy to jab into somebody who's passed out. It will.
Seeing the video of it is just horrifying. When someone is just literally convulsing or whatever they're doing, and all of a sudden, boom, they kind of come back to life as this stuff is inserted. It's kind of scientifically spooky, but
it is.
It's a good thing to have. But you think again, it ought to be tagging along with what prescriptions?
Well, an idea that probably will never fly, but I think it's reasonable to consider this, is to, once a doctor prescribes more than a few Vicodin, and I mean maybe 30 at a max, the pharmacist ought to be able to say to the person, by the way, these 30 can, if you take them all together and you're not an addict, it will kill you. And you need to have this on board, maybe to make people aware and make doctors aware. Maybe I shouldn't be prescribing 50, 60, 70.
Sure.
Because they're going to balk at saying, you can't tell me how
and
many
maybe give the customer a little idea that Advil might be a good choice.
Yeah, it's an amazing medication, which I never understood until I get off my,
what's the moral of the story here? Just how much time? I don't usually do this, but I lost track. How much time do I have for this? Oh, good. I've got a few minutes. What's the moral to the opiate story, and what's the moral to your story? Take them one at a time.
The opiate story is that it is very quickly addicting, and fortunately there are some drugs that will help you get off it so you don't have to go cold turkey. The number of people who were able to, without the use of methadone, which is not a very good drug, but it's better than nothing, and Suboxone, the newer drug, which used in a recovery setting, all by itself, it's just another drug, but used in a recovery setting can give people a chance to get over the horrible withdrawals. The relapse rate for people prior to the use of Suboxone. For example, I have a contract with the nursing board. Nurses used to go back to work after being cleared to go back to work, and the relapse rate, until they allowed them to be on Suboxone, was very high. So there are medications out there that'll help people get over the acute drop, but you've actually got to, eventually you need to be clean of everything. The moral of my story is that not only should you stop trying to control things, but the real problem, the real thing that I enjoy about this is there's great joy for me in recovery. Most of us, and all my patients share this and agree with me when I ask them this, we think that when we're in the throes of addiction that we're too smart, our dopamine is special. We need to feel better than those normal people over there. We look at normal people and think, is it really worth going through all the agony of withdrawing from this drug just to be like them? And I'm here to say that I've never, ever been as happy as I have 12 years off my dopamine enhancer. So there's real joy at the end of recovery. You have to understand that you got to go through a little bit of pain to get there, but the joy is overwhelming, and there's light at the end of the tunnel. My 8 grandkids who've never seen me impaired can tell you that better than my 4 children who did see me impaired.
And give me 30 seconds on how you did it. How did you do it, real quick? I know it's a long story.
I used to go to a lot of AA meetings because alcohol was the last thing I did, and it almost killed me. I sit there and think, I'm like those alcoholics. I'm like those alcoholics. How come I can't figure this out? And then one day, in a moment, I realized I'm not like those alcoholics. I'm one of them. And the minute I saw that difference, I knew that there was hope, because I knew a lot of alcoholics who don't drink.
If you need a doc, he's in Warwick at Medical Assisted Recovery. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Your pleasure.
I appreciate it.
It's a good read, too. Your State of Mind. Stay with us. Programs like we just had with Dr. Skip, these are stories that need to be told, and if you've got one, I'd be more than honored to have you here on the broadcast. Alrighty, so thanks. We're here each weeknight, 7:30 and 11:30 on MyRI TV, and I'm sure, with no further ado, we'll be back to the rundown for the day and getting after it. But thanks for watching. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time on MyRI TV, on My State of Mind. I'm Dan York. Good night.